The story of Judas's 30 silver coins begins at the Last Supper, when Jesus reveals he will be betrayed by someone at the table. The traitor Judas had negotiated his master's whereabouts with the priests for just 30 silver coins. After the arrest and crucifixion, Judas, consumed by guilt, hangs himself on the outskirts of Jerusalem. The 30 coins fall and scatter across the ground, sparking an ancient curse. In Switzerland, an old man, wearing a spherical necklace, storms a bank, firing a gun. The security guards return fire and hit him several times, but the man doesn't get a scratch and keeps attacking. His only goal is to steal an ancient silver coin kept in the vault. After grabbing the artifact, he walks back outside, taking more bullets, but moving as if he were immortal. He gets into a car where a man in dark sunglasses is waiting for him. As soon as the driver rips the necklace off the old man's neck, he drops dead instantly. The man takes the coin and flees. In the town of Pedraza, Spain, residents gather in a barn to help with a complicated cow birth. During a fierce storm, a gust of wind flings the barn doors open. The veterinarian Helena tries to close them, but the force of the storm stops her, and she returns to help the animal. To everyone's shock, the cow does not give birth to a calf, but to a human. Chaos overtakes the town. Mayor Paco arrives quickly, and after examining the newborn, he tries to cover it up to avoid panic. Not knowing what to do, he and some residents seek help from Father Vergara. Vergara is an unusual priest, an ex-convict, muscular, and hard-edged. Upon hearing the bizarre story, he mocks it. However, when he analyzes the barn's security camera footage on his phone, he notices a crucial detail. The wind blew out the lights for exactly a few moments, creating a blind spot at the time of the birth. To the priest, the cow did not give birth to a human. Someone used the darkness to swap the calf for a newborn. The real question is to discover who the real mother is. Paco's wife Merche pressures her husband to ignore the case and focus only on the opening of their new family business. But the mayor refuses to turn his back on the mystery. Soon a strong suspicion arises. Trin, a local teenager, went missing from school a week ago and had been showing a protruding belly. Believing she hid the pregnancy and abandoned the child in the barn, Paco and Helena go to the farm to investigate. The girl's father reacts with violence to the insinuations and insults Helena, causing a massive commotion. In the midst of the chaos, Trin goes into labor right then and there. She had tied her own belly tightly with cloth to hide the pregnancy. Paco and Helena rush the girl to the hospital. So, the mysterious newborn from the barn is not her son. While analyzing the security footage, the main suspect in the baby swap appears to be a young vagrant who always hangs around the area. The suspect catches Father Vergara transporting a heavy arsenal into the church. When discovered, he is threatened by the priest, but agrees to keep the secret and even offers to hide the weapons in a safe place. Shortly after, Paco and the police search the young man's tent and find dozens of religious artifacts, including a stolen Bible from the parish. At that moment, the church bells ring by themselves. The crowd gathers and sees the vagrant on the roof, threatening to throw the newborn, shouting grim prophecies about the coming of the devil. Vergara climbs up to try to stop him until he gives in, hands the baby to Helena, and tells the priest he did that for him so that his sins would be forgiven. Then he jumps. In the confusion, Helena finds an ancient silver coin on the ground and quickly hides it before Vergara can see. Investigating the priest's past, Paco discovers that Vergara is a former exorcist who served prison time after the death of a patient, but the mayor decides to keep trusting him. Later, Helena goes to the church and shows him the coin. Vergara freezes when he recognizes it. He reveals that the coin is the same one he extracted from under the skin of the boy Giacomo during the exorcism that ruined his life at the exact moment the young man died. Without explaining the mystery, the priest tells Helena to hide the object at the farm. The elderly woman who owns the cow thanks Helena for the newborn, believing it to be a miracle. The woman's husband, however, intercepts the veterinarian and reveals that the couple lost a son to drowning years ago, which destroyed his wife's psyche. He swears the baby is not a blessing, but rather a grotesque curse, revealing that he grows at a bizarre rate and already shows signs that he will start walking in a few days. Helena suspects the child suffers from an extreme hormonal disorder, but Paco treats the case with skepticism. When dropping the veterinarian at home, the mayor notices a photo of her husband, who vanished without a trace 12 years ago. Worried about gossip from being seen leaving a widow's house. In the middle of the night, Paco hesitates at the door, sparking Helena's fury and contempt. Knowing that danger is imminent, Vergara hands her an envelope and warns that the real question is not who the mother of the newborn is, but rather, who is looking for him. At the farm, the elderly woman starts feeding the newborn raw liver. Terrified, the husband turns to flee for help, but his wife attacks and kills him with a knitting needle. Later, Helena goes to Paco's house and throws stones at his window to get his attention. She shows him the priest's envelope, which holds an adoption agreement signed by the elderly woman and her husband, proving that the newborn was delivered to them by someone, or rather, by some entity of supreme evil. Determined to uncover the truth, the two break into the old woman's house that same night. Inside, the house has become a spider's nest with wool webs woven by the old woman, and her husband's body hanging in the middle of the room. Suddenly, the woman appears, asking if they also want to steal her child, and lunges at Paco with a knife. Helena manages to flee, leaving the mayor behind. Possessed, the old woman traps Paco and reveals that a voice in her head is making her do all of this. Helena runs and returns with the police and Father Vergara, all with weapons drawn. The possessed old woman stares at the priest and warns him. He cannot escape what is coming, demanding that he return their silver coin. At that moment, Vergara understands that he and the coin are the true targets. An insane fight begins with superhuman strength. The old woman puts up a fight, and the police see no other choice but to shoot her. Injured, Paco is rushed to the hospital accompanied by his wife. After the chaos, Helena returns to the house to look for the baby. In a dark corner, she sees the silhouette of a full-grown bearded man and almost thinks the newborn has grown magically, but soon realizes it is just the priest hiding. He warns her that the only way to stay safe is to not believe what she sees and to deny reality. Helena picks up a strange leathery pouch from the floor and retorts, asking how it would be possible to ignore something like that. In the ambulance, Paco tries to say something before passing out. Beside him, the old woman, who should have already passed on, simply sits up, muttering, and holding a handmade baby toy. Suddenly, a gigantic spider-like creature appears in the middle of the road. The driver tries to swerve, but the ambulance rolls over badly, and the jolt wakes Paco up. The monster opens the vehicle's doors, and the old woman steps out happily, saying goodbye to the mayor and telling him her son has come for her. Meanwhile, at the church, the priest takes Helena to a secret room lined with weapons and ammunition, telling her to pick whatever she can use. They hear a noise outside. The possessed old woman has followed them. She begs for the coin, warning that if they do not hand it over, the voices will force her to kill them both. She lands a hard slap on Vergara that sends him flying, and Helena hides. At the same time, Paco tries to call to warn them about the bizarre creature, but the medical team takes the phone from his hand. At the church, the old woman keeps hunting for the coin. Helena musters her courage, shows the artifact, and asks if that is what she wants. When the woman reaches for it, Vergara charges and throws her against the wall. The priest performs a quick ritual, blessing the bullets with the power to fight demons, and shoots her. This time she drops dead to the floor. He drags the body away, while Helena watches from the shadows. Then the true nightmare appears in front of her. The boy born from the cow had transformed into an 8-legged monster with a terrifying face. Helena's phone rings. It is Paco, who managed to call while the medical team was distracted. He tells the veterinarian to destroy the talisman, the little toy the old woman was carrying. She grabs the object, but ends up cornered by the monster, which seems to be showing off for her. With a stroke of luck, she manages to shatter the toy. The tactic works. The creature becomes disoriented, retreats, and flees into a sewer. Vergara explains his trick and says he locked the old woman in the sacred chamber and that she is not gone, just unconscious. The blessed bullets were blanks. The priest explains that he played with the demons. Logic, making the entity believe the weapons would subdue it, and the illusion was enough to bring it down. But when Helena asks what the logic behind an 8-legged monster would be, the priest has no answer. The next day, the old woman's death makes headlines. But nothing about boys born from cows or creatures. Paco suggests it was all a dream or the effect of some hallucinogen. But Helena disagrees. One day, a wealthy man from the town seeks her out, planning to sell everything and travel the world, and wants her to be the veterinarian for his horses at competitions. But he really wants to spend some time alone with her. They even have a few drinks, but Paco shows up and drives the rich man away immediately. It turns out the horseman was his great rival in the election, and the two are now competing for Helena's attention. Meanwhile, the bar owner's son steals liquor and runs off to the cemetery with friends to play a summoning game. The problem is they end up summoning Giacomo, the ghost of the exorcised boy. The spirit starts playing hide and seek, and suddenly all the candles go out. When they turn on their phone flashlights, one of the girls' soul has vanished. The town organizes searches, but days pass with no sign of the girl. Her father has worked as a guard for the horsemen for 20 years. Her mother, who was head of staff at the castle, abandoned Soul when she was a child. With her disappearance, her father is on the verge of collapse. When Helena and Vergara go talk to him, they learn about the game and the spirit's name. She pieces things together, suspecting the ghost followed the priest to Spain, and confirms her theory with Elvira, another girl who was at the cemetery. Sometime later, Soul's father bursts into the grand opening of Paco's new hotel, armed, demanding to know where his daughter is. That night, the group of friends is discussing the disappearance when, out of nowhere, Soul's number sends strange messages and crying emojis. Then, Elvira receives a call from her friend, begging them to play the game again, because that is the only way to save her. At the same time, Helena hides the silver coin under a rock to research the matter online, but gets a fright when Elvira knocks on her window. The girl drags her to a house where the Ouija board is already set up. Before they begin, the glass moves by itself. Soul makes contact and says they want to talk to Helena. When she puts her hand on the glass and demands the return of the coin, she falls into a trance and sees several red-robed priests controlling the board. The candles go out and light up again. At that moment, Soul reappears, alive but strange. She looks at an elderly man and warns him he will die tonight. The man clutches his chest and, indeed, dies hours later. Later, she tells Elvira that the disappearance felt like a real dream, and now she can see colored auras around people. The old man had a red one that darkened until it turned black, the mark of imminent death. To prove it, she points to a man holding flowers on a balcony down below, saying his aura is black. Elvira runs to tell Helena, but the man with the flowers gets run over and dies. Convinced that everything revolves around the coin, Helena begs for Paco's help, but he is being coerced by his wife to focus on the elections and family business and ignore the problem. Helena turns to Father Vergara, who goes with her to Soul's house, where they break down the door just in time to stop her from jumping. After being saved, the girl stares at the priest and warns him that his aura is red and about to turn black. That night, the priest's TV turns on by itself with a message. If he does not return the silver coin by dawn, the town and everyone he loves will be destroyed. Soul suddenly appears, and while Vergara turns to get water, she grabs a knife from the table. The priest receives a small cloth from the girl's hands. Inside, it is her freshly severed finger. Possessed by an evil force, Soul threatens to tear off her ears and tongue if the curse is not broken. Vergara ignores her and tries to call the police, but she cuts her mouth with a knife and warns that if the authorities arrive, she will say he did it. The priest manages to calm her down, promising to find the coin, and takes her to Helena's house to search for the artifact. At the same time, Helena is being escorted home by the rich man from the castle. When they arrive, they see the lights on, rush inside, and come face to face with Vergara and Soul. The rich man tries to play the hero and interrogates the priest, but Soul pulls out the knife and stabs him, demanding the coin to make the voices stop. The girl advances in. The confusion. The rich man knocks over a lamp, and a light projects onto the wall the shadows of several priests, proving that Soul is being manipulated. While Helena retrieves the hidden coin, Vergara grabs the girl and shouts for her to fight the mind control, but she uses telekinesis and rips the roof off the house. Everything starts getting sucked into the sky, and the rich man is launched into the air. In a final effort, the priest tells the girl to think of her deceased mother, and the memory breaks the trance. Soul calms down, the power vanishes, and the roof returns to its place as if nothing had happened. The rich man falls outside, and they take him and Soul to the hospital. It turns out the demons used her pain, promising that the silver coin could resurrect her mother. At the hospital, the vagrant who jumped from the building is alive and talking to himself, assuring the entity that he will take care of Vergara. In New York, another man wearing a necklace enters a coin shop. He rips one from his own neck and slits the seller's throat, retrieves the coin he was looking for, gets into a taxi, and leaves. Back in a small town, Paco is officiating a wedding at City Hall. While they wait, the driver bringing the cake had been driving without sleep, mumbling nonsense about a mirror. He has an accident and crashes into a tree. Paco goes to the hospital to investigate, and the man's wife tells him they run a pharmacy and just bought an old house that had been abandoned for 50 years. During the renovation, they found something impossible to explain. She takes the mayor there and points to an antique mirror. Paco looks and says he sees nothing wrong, so she asks him to look closer. Shortly after, Helena receives an urgent call from him, telling her to rush to the pharmacy because he has discovered something unbelievable. Before leaving, her dog freaks out. Sensing the strange energy, she locks the dog in its crate, puts the coin in a small box, and hurries to the location. Arriving there, Helena stares at the antique mirror. Paco asks her to look at a book, then look at the real table. In truth, the book only exists inside the mirror. Using a magnifying glass, she deciphers the Greek title, the Gospel of Judas. She researches and discovers that, while the traditional Bible treats Judas as the great traitor, this gospel flips everything. In it, Judas was the most faithful disciple of Jesus, and the betrayal was a request from Christ himself to fulfill the divine plan of redemption. Paco and Helena call Father Vergara, who confirms the story of the Gospel of Judas. He explains that heretics adore this text because it creates a dangerous paradox. If Judas did what God commanded, then doing evil, in this case, was doing good. Paco takes the priest to face the mirror. In the reflection, the book is thick and complete, unlike in the real world. They also notice that in the reflection, the backroom door is wide open, while in real life it is locked. Vergara flips the light switch, but the door in the mirror does not even move. Suddenly, Helena sees a shadow enter the reflected room. The three rush to check but find nothing. Intrigued, the priest decides to stay alone to investigate and sends Paco and Helena away. The mayor installs cameras and gives Helena access to the app. The priest spends hours there and nothing happens, but when a noise startles him, it is just a rat. Paco sends messages in the chat to Helena as he watches, laughing, while his wife thinks he's watching adult videos. Around 5 in the morning, the priest's reflection stands up and stares at the real one. At that moment, the dogs at the clinic start barking. The next day, Paco and Helena return and find the priest snoring heavily at the table. He wakes him up and reveals that the cameras recorded his mirror version entering the room, and inside, there was a man slumped in a chair. It was Giacomo, making it clear that the mirror reflects the darkest side of people. Helena talks to the driver's wife and discovers that things inside the mirror can be touched. As she leaves, she runs into the vagrant, still recovering. He says the priest should be careful because the Romans are preparing to attack. Soon after, Paco and Helena notice from the street that the pharmacy curtains have been drawn. They rush up and catch the priest about to smash the mirror with a hammer, stopping him just in time. At that moment, the priest's reflection comes to life and asks to speak to the real one in private. Paco and Helena leave the room, believing the cameras will record everything, but he turns them all off. The two rush back, but the door is locked from the inside. The mirror Vergara pushes Giacomo toward the real one, who begs the boy for forgiveness. But Giacomo gets up and pulls him into the mirror. At that moment, the reflection Vergara steps out into the real world. When they manage to get in, the two do not notice the swap that just happened. The false priest simply says they want the silver coin. He leads them to the church and explains that since heretics believe doing evil is the true way to do good, they spread chaos on purpose. He shows two relics, the blood of Ambrose and the sponge used to give vinegar to Jesus on the cross. According to him, these objects gained infinite power. The heretics also have their own relics, objects used in Christ's destruction, like the cross nails, the crown of thorns, and the spear of destiny. But the ultimate source of power for them is the 30 silver coins of Judas. The priest tries to convince Helena to hand over the coin, and since it is kept at the clinic, he goes with them. When she's about to hand it over, Helena notices the numbers on the clock are inverted, pushes him away, locks herself in with Paco, who calls the police while the clinic dogs freak out. The false priest arrives at the police station, tells them to ignore the clinic call, and invites everyone to the church. Along the way, he hypnotizes the residents one by one, forming a mob ready to massacre Paco and Helena. At the clinic, she sedates one of the dogs with a dose of anesthesia and deduces that if the evil copy is here, the real one is still trapped. They return to the pharmacy, stand before the mirror, and Helena manages to pull the ghostly book out from inside. They step through and arrive at a massive hall, full of mirrors that function as windows to different parts of the world. In one of them, several red-robed bishops are gathered. The real priest has a sack over his head, about to be executed by the cult leader. Meanwhile, the enraged mob invades the clinic, smashing everything. Helena uses the silver coin itself to strike the mirror, and Vergara seizes the gap, runs toward them, and manages to cross through. As soon as he passes, the false priest disappears. The mirror turns back into an ordinary wall, and the residents snap out of their trance, confused in the middle of the destroyed clinic. Furious at seeing her clinic in ruins, Helena scolds the crowd, goes to the town bridge, and throws the relic into the depths of the river. Far away, in a subway tunnel, a group of disguised heretics finds the true cross. The same man with sunglasses appears and rips out another coin embedded in the wood. Back in the small town, Paco decides not to tell the truth so as not to drive people mad. He makes up a story that the clinic caught fire by accident and asks for donations to help rebuild it. At that moment, Trin's father lists all the madness that has happened and points to Father Vergara as the culprit. Merche brings up his prison past, and the people revolt, deciding to demand his expulsion from the bishop. Realizing that his presence is dangerous, he packs his bags and leaves silently. In a flashback to Rome, in the year 1990, he and his two friends, Sandro and Fabio, talk about religion. Fabio said that finding God was impossible because he was on a level unreachable for mere mortals, but the devil was only one step away. His theory was that if they could capture the devil, maybe they would get God's attention to prove their courage. He picked up a fork and drove it into his hand without flinching. In the present, the priest arrives in Rome. Meanwhile, the people start making donations to help Helena rebuild the clinic. When some throw money through her car window, she throws it all back out. Tired, she goes after the rich man from the castle, deciding to accept his proposal to travel the world with him and get out of there. In Rome, Vergara visits a ruined temple, which triggers another flashback. In the classroom, the teacher taught that prayer was the ultimate weapon against evil. Young Fabio asked why not try listening first to what the devil had to say, insisting it is impossible to defeat an enemy you do not understand. That night, Fabio took the two to a warehouse and showed them a man who had been tied up for 2 months, claiming the creature was the devil himself. Sandro pulled out holy water, but it did nothing. The man asked for a cigarette and revealed that at age 12, Vergara had accidentally killed his own dog and buried it in the backyard in secret, causing a huge fight between his parents. The creature also blurted out the name of the girl he liked in his youth. Convinced, the priest froze, but Sandro kept demanding proof. The demon's response was to spit a fireball that burned him instantly. The creature revealed that after the heavenly war, Satan and his followers retreated to a safe, invisible place hidden inside God. In other words, evil was a part of the Creator. Fascinated, Fabio wanted to meet the boss of it all. The man simply pointed to a door, and Fabio tried to drag Vergara along, but he refused. Without thinking twice, the friend walked through and entered alone. When Vergara opened the same door shortly after, the place was empty. Back in the present, Vergara goes to an underground fight club to meet Sandro again and tells him about the mirror nightmare. It turns out the leader of the cult that tried to execute him was Fabio. Sandro reveals that he is now the powerful president of an interfaith committee with a lot of influence inside the Vatican. Sandro now lives, getting beaten at the club, explaining that physical pain acts as a shield, preventing Fabio from tracking them through the energies. To hide, Vergara needs to go to a place with unimaginable levels of pain and suffering. So, he decides to go to the war zone in Syria. In the small town, Paco watches Helena finish packing her bags. Dying of jealousy, he blames his own wife, venting all his rage at her. Crying as she drives, Merche crosses paths with the vagrant in a wheelchair, who blurts out a strange warning about an old woman in town being a demon. But she comforts him and takes him back to the hospital. It turns out that since Fabio crossed that door, Vergara and Sandro had to go on with life alone. Vergara bumped into him years later in Jerusalem. But when he tried to talk to him, Fabio said he had mistaken him and got into a car with a killer with dark sunglasses was. Back in the present, Vergara meets with a priest named Lombardi, who reminds him that the church sent him to that town to deal with the things happening there. Meanwhile, an old woman approaches a scarecrow in the middle of the field, takes a wallet from it that holds a photo of Helena and her husband, and begins performing a magic ritual. Meanwhile, in the conversation with Lombardi, Vergara mentions the 30 silver coins and wonders why Fabio did not just kill him if all he wanted was the coin. Lombardi warns him that the only one who can save him now is the Holy Father. As he says goodbye, the priest comes face to face with the same demon from the warehouse, who vanishes into thin air. Suddenly, he wakes up, realizing it was just a nightmare. The next day, Vergara packs his bags to go after the Holy Father. In town, the old woman's ritual ends. The scarecrow comes to life and transforms into a human being who goes home and washes the mud off his body. Far away, Helena and the rich man are about to board a plane to travel the world, but are intercepted by Paco and a police officer. The mayor tells her that her husband, who had been missing for 12 years, has been found. So she abandons the trip and returns. Meanwhile, Vergara finally finds the Holy Father and reports everything. His instruction is to report first to the cardinal. But who appears wearing the red robes is none other than Fabio. In the past, Vergara and Fabio were friends and traded collectible cards. He opened up about the guilt of accidentally killing the animal and his parents' fight. To comfort him, Fabio gave him all his cards and asked him where he hid the silver coin. Vergara says it is with Helena, but realizes there was no way Fabio could have known her back then. It turns out he fell into a mental illusion. In town, Paco takes Helena to the police station, and a reunion happens. The man is truly her husband, making Paco jealous. At the same time, the priest falls back into Fabio's illusions every time he closes his eyes. In one of them, Sandro appears and warns him he should never have come back. At that moment, Fabio reappears demanding the coin. Sandro pulls his friend into a concrete pipe and says they are dreaming, telling the priest to wake up and wait for him. Then, Vergara hands him a card and flees. Sandro wakes up at the club, goes out to the street, and buys an identical postcard to the one from the dream. It indicates the castle where Vergara is hiding. He travels there, but is stopped by security at the entrance, since visits are restricted. To make things worse, the killer with dark sunglasses arrives, carrying a mysterious briefcase. Taking advantage of a guard's distraction, Sandro manages to infiltrate. Back in town, gossip about Helena with 3 men spreads, Paco hears the rumors and storms off furiously. Trin's father, upon hearing the news, is shocked. At the castle, Sandro walks through the exhibition and comes face to face with the Spear of Destiny, the weapon that pierced Jesus on the cross and once belonged to Hitler. He sees the killer with sunglasses entering a room, lures a guard to a corner, knocks him out, and invades as well. Meanwhile, Trin's father decides to see Helena's husband with his own eyes. He recoils, terrified, insisting the man is not human. He grabs a hunting rifle, breaks into Helena's house, and starts shooting wildly. Fortunately, a policeman shows up and shoots him in the arm. Paco arrives right after, and the man confesses that he himself had murdered Helena's husband years ago and buried the body. Unaware of this, Helena is in the car with her husband, fleeing to start a new life. Along the way, he turns aggressive, slaps her, and demands to know where the coin is hidden. Then he loses control and drives the car into a ditch. In Rome, Sandro discovers Vergara's whereabouts, seeing his friend being dressed for a ceremony and led into a great hall. Inside, Fabio takes the stage and gives a speech. He reveals that the heretics have already gathered 29 silver coins and only the last one is missing, inviting the priest to join them. Sandro enters the hall, clapping mockingly, but is captured. Fabio takes Vergara to the Vatican archives and shows him the Book of Miracles of the Three Wise Men, an ancient book of spells that explains where the heretics' dark magic comes from. He also reveals that he is deciphering the very gospel written by Jesus, a text so shocking that Christ himself wanted it hidden. Fabio offers full access to everything if the priest joins them. Then he accepts the proposal. The two go to Sandro, and with a simple wave, Fabio flings him across the room, hands Vergara a knife, and tells him to kill his friend. But the priest turns the tables, refuses, and decides to flee with Sandro. Fabio casts a spell on a nearby corpse. Then a monster rises from inside it and goes after the two. Meanwhile, Helena is carried to another car to continue the journey. At the same time, Paco digs at the spot indicated by Trin's father and discovers Helena's real husband. Soon after, he receives a message from Helena asking for help. The false husband drags her to a bridge and demands the coin once more. She points to the river and says she threw it in, telling him to go get it. But he replies that the coin will return on its own and prepares to jump off the bridge, holding her. Fortunately, Paco and the policeman arrive in time to rescue her. At the Vatican, Vergara and Sandro fight the creature, but it uses its tentacles to grab Sandro and crushes him. When it is about to tear Vergara apart, Fabio stops it, warning that he still needs the priest alive. The father grabs the legendary Spear of Destiny, drives it into the monster, kills the creature, and flees. The group finds an isolated place in the cemetery and buries the false husband. The tension heats up between Helena and Paco, and they almost kiss, but the rich man calls. Right at that moment, determined to escape all this madness, she abandons the town and goes to Paris to meet the horseman. What she does not imagine is that at a fancy restaurant in France, the rich man orders fish, and when the chef cuts the animal, he finds a silver coin inside its stomach. So it really had returned on its own. Far away, Vergara receives a call from Helena asking for his location so they can join forces. But the priest spots the trap. The voice was Fabio using a spell. He smashes his phone and flees to Assyria, seeking refuge in the middle of the war. With the energy of suffering masks his trail. Back in the small town, it is election day. Paco takes the stage, throws everything up in the air, and announces his resignation, leaving his wife furious. At the same time, 2 national security agents arrive in town to investigate the dozens of bizarre reports filed by the local policemen. They go straight to the home of Trin's father, who is under house arrest for shooting Helena's husband. But before he can be interrogated and risk talking too much, the man panics and kills himself with a gunshot. In Syria, Father Lombardi finds Vergara and shares that the Pope suffered an attack and Fabio has taken control. Behind the scenes at the Vatican, if he gathers all 30 coins, the power of darkness will nullify the Church's sacred relics, and he will dominate everything. Needing to contact Helena urgently, Vergara sedates himself with anesthesia and enters the world of dreams. He finds her in a supermarket and tells her to protect the coin, but she says she already threw the artifact in the river. Suddenly, Fabio hacks the dream. The scene turns into a maze, and Sol appears out of nowhere, cutting her mouth with a knife. When she closes her eyes, Helena is alone in the dream and sees Fabio dressed as a cardinal in his red robes, seemingly swallowing his own body. In Syria, the cross around the priest's neck causes local soldiers to arrest him on charges of inciting religious conflict, and they throw him into a well. In the small town, mourning for Trin's father affects everyone. At home, Paco and Merche have their final fight. He only wanted a simple life and is fed up with being his wife's business puppet. Merche accuses her husband of destroying their marriage because of his passion for Helena and tells him to go after her. Without hesitating, he grabs an empty suitcase, leaves the house, and tries to call, but no one answers. In Paris, the killer in dark sunglasses approaches an old man on the street and hands him a necklace. In the blink of an eye, the man becomes a puppet like the others. Nearby, the rich man is having dinner with Helena. He laughs, telling her he found something inside the stomach of the fish served hours earlier, and she is shocked to realize it is the coin. Helena runs to the bathroom and calls Paco, who is being interrogated by the security agents in Spain. Before he can understand the situation, 2 gunshots ring out. The controlled old man climbs the restaurant stairs and executes the rich man in cold blood. Hidden, Helena watches him search the floor for the coin. A security guard charges, fights him, and rips the necklace from his neck, making the old man collapse. Trembling, Helena looks down and realizes the coin rolled and stopped exactly under her shoe. In Spain, Merche is poisoned by the gossipy widows of the town, who encourage her to fix herself up and destroy Helena. Back in Syria, Vergara asks God what to do. A rope falls beside him, and he climbs toward the light, only to be kicked back down while the guards laugh above. Far away, the vagrant wakes up in the hospital, screaming that a new priest is coming. The federal agents go to interrogate him, and a man tells them about the baby born from the cow, the giant spider, the cursed mirror. The detectives just laugh, treating him like a lunatic. However, as they walk along the town wall, they spot a figure in black. The man introduces himself as the new priest sent by the bishop. However, it is the devil in person. Merche puts the new priest up in the best room in town after he refuses the parish house. On their way out, the 2 federal agents notice a black goo on the floor. Inside the room, the priest takes the same substance from a vial, swallows it, and wipes his fingers on his mouth. In Syria, Vergara remains trapped at the bottom of the well. Giacomo appears in the darkness, thanks him for having extracted the coin from his arm, and shows the palms of his hands pierced and bleeding. The well cover is opened, Giacomo disappears, and the soldiers pull the priest out. Blindfolded, he is led into the middle of the desert. As the rich man's body is brought back for burial, the federal agents force the local policeman to exhume Helena's husband's bones and perform an official autopsy. In the Syrian desert, Vergara is rescued. An allied soldier cuts his bindings, returns his cross, and the 2 flee in a car with other fugitives. Suddenly, a guard jumps onto the vehicle and engages in direct combat with the priest, causing the car to roll over. The 2 climb out of the wreckage fighting until the priest kills the guard with a knife strike. When he checks the body, he realizes the wound is identical to the mark on Giacomo's hands. In town, the vagrant follows the new priest's steps. He hands a packet of powder to an old woman, who walks to the sewers and pours the material through the drains. Merche goes to meet the priest to deliver the church keys and confesses her obsession with money and Paco's betrayal. The false priest slips and mentions Helena's name before Merche has said it. He covers up the mistake and hands her a card, instructing her to hide it in the mayor's coat. At the police station, the autopsy confirms the skeleton was shot in the head with a shotgun. Exhausted from trying to explain to the agents that the dead man came back to life and then crumbled, the policeman slams the table and quits. Meanwhile, the old woman breaks into the slaughterhouse, takes out the security guard with a blow, and flees pushing a cart loaded with pig heads. A white smoke with a strong sewer smell starts leaking through the town's manholes. Merche enters Paco's hotel room and hides the card in his coat pocket. The mayor watches the smoke on the street. Records. A voice message for Helena, saying he will reveal the truth to the residents, and puts on the coat. Nearby, the vagrant approaches the new priest as he sprays a black liquid along the edge of the streets. Not understanding the danger, the boy offers to help. The priest hands him the container and orders him to finish outlining the entire perimeter of the town with the substance. So he does. At the bar, Paco tries to reveal the truth to the residents, but the new priest shows up and easily takes control of the crowd. The vagrant enters right after, accuses the man of being the devil himself, and warns that the fog is only meant to hide the line on the ground. The federal agents find a pig's head nailed to a door, and a girl discovers that an invisible barrier blocks the town, so no one can leave. Weak and feverish from the hidden card, Paco falls gravely ill. The next day, Helena returns with the last silver coin. When she touches the fog, she triggers a mystical alert that warns the heretics of her arrival. The magical barrier allows her entry, and she helps an elderly woman walk to the hotel, but the woman abandons her at the entrance, warning that someone is waiting for her. In the room, Helena finds Paco on the brink of death. Far away, Vergara sees the dome of fog from a high point, speeds the car, and invades the town without hesitation. At the church, Merche panics and confronts the false priest, who reveals that the town was chosen for a colossal event and tells her to flee through the vestry window. Then he locks all the residents inside the parish and sets the place on fire. Merche flees to the hotel and catches Helena, taking care of Paco. Blind with jealousy, she lunges at her while Paco tries to get up to break up the fight. In the struggle, the card falls from his pocket, breaking the spell as Merche rips the coin from Helena's neck. When the mayor begs her to give it back, she kicks him, runs to the street, and hands the relic to the devil. Desperate, the residents break down the burning church doors. Walking against the panicked crowd, Vergara opens his arsenal, arms himself, and tosses a supply bag to Paco and Helena. The false priest emerges from the fog, covered in macabre symbols, and summons a force of darkness. At that moment, a monster bursts from the ground and knocks Vergara down with a single brutal blow. Paco and Helena drag the priest back to the ruins of the church. Unable to find his enemies, the devil retreats, dissipates the fog, and lets the residents return to their routine. But now everyone acts like zombies under his mind control. A week later, a group of Japanese tourists arrives in town and is immediately surrounded by the possessed crowd. Hidden in a basement with Helena and Vergara, Paco watches the scene after hunting a pigeon to eat. He says he saw Merche on the street and suspects she is only pretending to be bewitched to survive. But Helena warns him about emotional traps. Meanwhile, Vergara finally deciphers the magic of the black line that imprisoned the town. It is an ancient curse made with the blood of the unborn. Vergara opens a hole in the basement wall because he needs Ambrose's blood, a relic kept at the church, and a map of the underground tunnels. Paco makes his way to the parish where the devil forces the tourists to swallow a black host, a dark communion that transforms them into puppets. Merche hides the host in her hand instead of swallowing it. Paco retrieves the blood of Ambrose, but instead of retreating, he joins Helena to look for the building plan. They are discovered, and Paco knocks down one of the guards while Helena subdues another with a gun, forcing him to hand over the map. Back at the hideout, Vergara crushes the vial with Ambrose's blood, rubs the liquid on his eyes, and drips one drop onto a pigeon. The magic creates a vision link, and he releases the bird, but a resident throws a stone and brings it down. In town, the policeman prefers death to serving the enemy and ends up hanged in the square. Meanwhile, Paco goes on patrol and sees a convoy unloading supplies in town. When he passes by his house, he finds Merche preparing dinner, much to his relief. His wife did not take the communion and is lucid, but the mood is heavy. She criticizes his obsession with Helena, and Paco leaves. In town, the vagrant rescues the hanged policeman and feeds him stolen food. He talks about the silver coins, telling him that Napoleon had 3 and Hitler 5. If Fabio gathers them all, the world will be destroyed in the blink of an eye. At the same time, Merche takes the leftovers of Paco's meal to the town witch and hands them over. The old woman mixes the saliva with Murch's tears and creates a black potion. She dips a needle into the liquid and pins it to Murch's clothes, saying her weapon is ready. In the basement, Paco meets Helena again, and they kiss, irritating Vergara. The priest decides to advance alone through the tunnels, but ends up falling into a trap. Paco hears a strange noise and sees his wife's silhouette. Seconds later, Merche emerges from the shadows, lunges at Helena, and drives the needle into her throat, making her collapse. Paco screams for Vergara, but when the priest returns, Helena and Merche have already disappeared. On the surface, a luxury convoy invades the town, and dozens of bishops disembark, led by Fabio. Amid blood and carcasses in the streets, Fabio embraces the devil, who announces that everything is ready for the great coronation. In the tunnels, Vergara and Paco track Helena and emerge at the town hotel. The mayor blames himself for the kidnapping, but the priest keeps him focused on the mission. They find Helena unconscious in one of the rooms, and two bishops pass by in the hallway. Vergara decides to follow them, and Paco cocks his gun to provide cover. A sinister voice orders him to stop. When the mayor turns to see who it is, he raises his gun immediately. The old woman is caressing Helena and promises to save her if he pulls out the needle. Paco obeys, but the wound starts gushing blood without stopping. Enraged, he charges at the old woman as she transforms into an arachnid monster. They fight, but Paco manages to crush the creature. Meanwhile, Fabio puts on his leader's robes. The devil hands him the spear of destiny and a crown studded with the 29 silver coins. Vergara tries to stop the ritual, but the devil charges and knocks him down. When he wakes up, he tries to fight, using everything he knows, but it is useless. The devil then reveals that he took the form of Giacomo for the sole purpose of delivering the coins. According to him, Giacomo was chosen by darkness, just as Judas was chosen by Jesus. At that moment, Fabio fits the 30th and final coin onto the crown. He drives the spear of destiny into Vergara's stomach and leaves him on the floor to bleed. Proclaiming himself the new pope, Fabio walks to the hall to make his grand coronation announcement. On the other side of town, Paco carries Helena to the car, but the path is blocked by the two federal agents, whom the mayor takes down with gunshots. He floors the accelerator and breaks through the heretic bishop's blockade. Meanwhile, the vagrant frees the pigeon marked with Ambrose's blood. The bird's vision remains connected to Vergara's mind, and in his final breaths, he controls it to attack and distract Fabio. Ignoring the pain, Vergara rips the spear from his stomach, runs toward the false pope, and grabs him tight. The two crash through the window and plummet to the ground, where the 30 coins scatter across the courtyard. The bishops rush over and start fighting on the ground to grab as much silver as possible. Merche steps on one of the coins, and the killer with sunglasses notices the movement, but instead of fighting, the two flee hand in hand. Paco leaves the town and speeds down the road to save Helena. The devil watches the bishops' division in the courtyard and decides to restart the game from scratch. He changes his appearance, crosses through the town's magical mirrors, and resurfaces, walking calmly through the streets of the United States.